Welcome to American Dreams, Keys to Success, with your host, Alan Olson.
Welcome back. I'm here today with Dr. Douglas Park. He's an attorney with the Rimon Law Firm located in Palo Alto. Doug, welcome to today's show.
Thank you, Alan. I'm happy to be here.
Doug, can you tell us about your background?
I went to Harvard College as an undergraduate, and I studied everything and everything there, anything and everything there. And after finishing there, I decided that I wanted to become a professor of business and management because I wanted to influence how companies, executives, and board members made decisions, took actions to affect and improve the performance of the companies that they were a part of. So I came out to California and to Stanford Business School, studied strategy and organizational behavior. And I was here and I learned a lot about Silicon Valley, the startup economy, but I also learned a lot about corporate governance issues, both from a business and a legal perspective. So after I finished up here at Stanford, I was looking for a faculty job, and I decided to look globally. The reason for that is it was 1997, and business was becoming increasingly international and global, even 15 years ago, Alan. So I was lucky enough to get a position at the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology. And that was just a perfect time to go there. It was 1997. Hong Kong was going to be under the control of China again after 100 years of British control. And Hong Kong is the gateway to the Chinese economy. And so it was just a fascinating time to be there and to study what was going on in East Asia at that time. So I taught students ranging from undergraduates up to senior executives, taught strategy, entrepreneurship, organizational behavior, and I also consulted to companies doing business throughout China and East Asia. And after a number of years, I decided that I wanted to work more closely with companies and business people. And I felt that a really good way to do that was by learning the law and becoming a corporate attorney. So I returned to the United States, went to law school at the University of Michigan, and actually finished up my third year here at Stanford Law School. And I've been back here in Silicon Valley for the last 10 years now with my family. And I've been a corporate and securities attorney working with a broad range of clients on really critical business and legal issues.
So as a corporate securities attorney, you deal a lot with corporate governance.
Yes.
What exactly is corporate governance?
That's a very good question, Alan, because sometimes there's a bit of confusion about what corporate governance is. So it starts really at the center with the company, the corporation. And there are really three parties surrounding the corporation that are really critical in the corporate governance system and make up that system. First is the board of directors, which everyone is very familiar with. They have the duty to make decisions that are in the best interests of the corporation. Well, secondly is the shareholders, the parties that own the stock of the corporation and have some economic rights to the value that the company creates. And finally, there's management. Management deals with the day-to-day operations and makes decisions on a daily basis that affect the performance of the corporation. Well, the board, one of the responsibilities of the board is to make sure that management is doing a good job and is acting in the interests of the shareholders. And so the shareholders are interested in what the board is doing, and they want the board to be properly overseeing and engaging with management. They also want to make sure that management is doing things that are in the shareholders' interest and not simply in the interest of personal interests of the executives.
What is the benefits of good governance and the harm that can come from bad governance?
So let me talk a little bit about actually the second part, which is what are some of the downsides of poor corporate governance. So one thing that we've seen recently in the news is stories about scandals, controversies at some of the iconic companies in America, Think about some of the companies here in Silicon Valley, Hewlett-Packard, which has gone through a string of corporate governance issues and problems, and has been in the news for that for many years now. The recent firing of the CEO at Yahoo before Marissa Mayer was brought on board, and the way that situation was handled by the board of directors. The board of directors received a lot of criticism for that. So there can be not only implications for the company's reputation, its image in the public and with shareholders and investors, but also in terms of performance. There's very good evidence, Alan, that poor corporate governance, when the board is not adequately doing its job, and when executives are taking advantage of their position, that can actually damage the company's performance and hurt shareholder interests.
We need to take a quick break, Dr. Park. And when we come back, I'd like to talk about the startup companies and how governance issues works there. We'll be right back after these messages.
With current laws, we have left our children an enormous financial burden. Even though they may be too young to understand it. At GrowCo, we care about you and the ones you love, and the quality of your and their lives. Call us today to see how we can help. 877-CPA-2006.
Helping you along the way.
Apple pie, baseball, and now here's All-American Alan Olson.
Welcome back. I'm visiting here today with Dr. Douglas Park. He's an attorney with the Rimon Law Group located in Palo Alto, California. Dr. Park, before the break, we're talking about corporate governance. I'd like to turn the page now into some of the key governance issues that startup companies face.
It's interesting, Alan, because I work with a lot of startups. In fact, I teach a class on starting startups at Stanford University. And one of the things that I often notice in talking with entrepreneurs is that they don't think very much about the governance of their companies because they're so focused on developing the product, getting customers, receiving financing from angels or venture capitalists, and that certainly is where they should be focusing their efforts. But governance is critical because it will have a lot to do with how successful their startup is going to be. So there are a couple of key issues, in my experience, Alan, that entrepreneurs and startups need to focus on with respect to governance. One is the relationship between the CEO and the board. Oftentimes, the CEO, who is often the founder of the company, needs to really pay attention to how he or she is managing that relationship with the board. The entrepreneur needs to develop a relationship of trust and confidence with the board, knowing that giving the board the strong impression and comfort that he or she is doing what is going to make the company successful. A second issue, Alan, that startups need to think about in terms of governance is growing the company. How are they going to grow the company? So it's about the company's strategy and about the company's business model. And again, the board can be an incredible resource for the entrepreneurs, for the founding team to implement and execute a successful business model. The third issue that often comes up, Alan, is the exit strategy. So sooner or later, the investors will want the entrepreneurs they will want an exit event, a liquidity event, so that the investors can reap a return on their investment. That might be in the form of a merger acquisition to a larger company or in the form of an IPO. But regardless, there needs to be planning by both the executives and the board for such an event.
What suggestions do you have to offer for startups?
Well, number one is to gain knowledge about these governance issues. A second one is to actively manage the relationship with the board. Prepare for board meetings. not only in terms of what's going to go on in the board meeting, but even before and after. Have a constant conversation with your board members. That's really critical. You shouldn't be talking to them only when something is going wrong or at the appointed time for the board meeting. Rather, you should be constantly communicating with them, getting feedback. That's how you develop this level of comfort and trust and confidence that you really want to achieve with your board members.
It's at Stanford, the students in there, are they actively in startups right now? Or are they thinking about doing it? Or what stage is your typical student?
I see my students are really at all stages, Alan. Some of them are serial entrepreneurs, and they've already started another startup, and they've even developed a product, and they're now getting ready to go out and sell it. Others just have a seed of an idea in their mind, and they want to test it out. They want to get feedback from other students. They want to learn more about how they can refine and improve their idea and their team, their product, and how they might go out and get ready to ask investors for money.
I'm visiting here today with Dr. Douglas Park. He teaches at Stanford University on strategy for companies, startups, and also is a practicing attorney at the Rimon Law Group located in Palo Alto, California. We'll be right back after these messages.
He's the world's most trustworthy man. Tax filing deadlines are scheduled around his vacation calendar. The IRS agent who audited his client apologized.
I don't always advise people on their taxes, but when I do, I save them every penny legally possible.
GROCO CPAs and Advisors.
Come to GROCO and stay wealthy, my friend.
Apple pie, baseball, and now here's All-American Alan Olson.
Welcome back. We're visiting here today with Dr. Douglas Park. He's an attorney with Rimon Law Group located in Palo Alto, California, and also an instructor at Stanford University for startup companies. Dr. Park, I want to move into public companies in this segment. What are some of the key issues and hot topics that public companies face today?
There are really quite a few, Alan, but I'll just narrow it down to a couple of core issues. First is executive compensation. There's increasing concern and complaints, really, by shareholders and other stakeholders about the disconnect between executive compensation and the company's performance. So these parties really want to see that there's a greater alignment between the CEO's compensation package and the company's performance. Secondly is the composition of the board of directors in terms of skills, experiences, and even diversity on the board of directors. So with the world changing so quickly around us, Alan, with globalization of business, with the increasing importance and rise of social media and technologies, including the recent Securities and Exchange Commission decision allowing companies to disclose material information through social media. It's extremely important that board members be current and up to date on these new technological trends, including cybersecurity issues.
How does the executive's compensation relate to all this?
So the idea is that the CEO and the top managers, again, are acting in many ways on behalf of the shareholders. And so the job of the executives is to take actions, to make decisions, to set strategies that are going to improve the economic performance of the company, which should benefit the shareholders and the investors. Now, if there is a connection, and if there's a connection between the executive's compensation package and the company's performance, the thinking is that the executives will be more incentivized and motivated to act in the interest of the shareholders, as opposed to simply acting to increase their own compensation.
How does the board's composition come about?
Typically, what happens is that the management team, in fact, often suggests a slate of directors for election at the shareholder meeting. And so sometimes there's also input from the board members. Often there is. But usually outsiders, people who are not on the board or not on the executive team, don't really have a lot of influence on who will be put up for election to the board of directors. So there's been a push in many quarters for increased access to the proxy, for allowing other parties to nominate directors for election. And so that's a big issue in governance these days as well.
Can you tell us a bit about the increasing emphasis on ESGs, or environmental social governance, by large institutional investors?
I'd be happy to, Alan. And in fact, that's an area that I've become increasingly involved in. I recently was appointed to the board of advisors for the Responsible Investment at Harvard University Coalition. And I've been working in the area of sustainability as well. And so increasingly, large institutional investors are realizing that factors other than pure financial factors like revenues, profits, and losses are important and affect the financial performance of the company. And so these investors are asking companies to put more emphasis on looking at issues like, is the business model sustainable over time? Is the company protecting and maintaining and building its intellectual property resources, including its brand and its reputation, not simply patents, trademarks, and copyrights? Does the company's hiring practices align with the company's culture? Is the company hiring the right kind of people? What kind of relationship does the corporation have with a local community? Are they being a good citizen in the community through volunteer efforts or philanthropic efforts in their local community to make the place where they do business a better place for their customers as well as the company?
I always like to see that last statement, when the company becomes involved in the community.
Yes.
Since it's employing so many people, but giving back, I feel, is an important part. In
Absolutely, and more companies are disclosing that. And increasingly, Alan, there's interest by stock exchanges going forward in the next 10 years of requiring public companies to disclose non-financial information to shareholders. In addition, there are non-profit as well as coalitions of various parties to encourage the disclosure of factors, of these environmental, social, and governance factors that are affecting the bottom line of the companies. And one thing that is...
Dr. Park, we got to wrap this up.
Sure.
We're coming up on the break. How does a person contact you if they'd like to engage your services?
Sure. So they can contact me at rimonlaw.com. That's probably the best way to do that.
That's RIMON law.com.
Correct.
Dr. Douglas Park, Rimon Law Group, and we've appreciated having you here on today's show.
Thank you very much, Alan.
We'll be right back after these messages.
You're listening to American Dreams with Alan Olson on AM 1220 KDOW.